And when we film 20 or more episodes in a single day. So we'll do all the preparation work ahead of time.
What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Why Influence podcast, where we interview influencers about their why and their motivation for influencing. I'm your host, Jeremy Siegel. Today, our guest is Nate Woodbury. He creates daily content for 11 YouTube channels. Most people struggle to do daily content for one channel, but Nate does it for 11 channels. Nate brings a very unique perspective to social media influencing, and I think you're gonna like this episode. This episode is a little bit longer than the average one so far, but it's for a good reason. Stick around, you won't regret it. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Why Influence podcast, where we deep dive into the why behind some of the world's most influential people. Why do you influence? Why are you an influencer? We hope to inspire you to share your voice with the world. And now, your host, Jeremy Siegel.
Nate, thanks so much for coming on the show. Before we jump into your why, I'd like to ask you a few questions so our audience can learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little about your personal background and what you did before social media influence?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur at heart for a long time, and I've tried lots of different things and didn't have any education in that. I got educated in human biology thinking I wanted to be a dentist, but quickly learned that it was really the self-employed side of it that I liked. And so I worked in finance for a while. Then I transitioned, and I'm really strong in sales. And so I went back to do a telemarketing job and happened to work for a search engine optimization company. And so I kind of learned the ropes of internet marketing from there. They had some pretty good training. And about 9 years ago, I went off on my own. So I started this company. We've offered several services over the years, but that's how I got into this line, where I now focus on working with influencers to help them really succeed on YouTube.
All right. So then can you dive in a little bit into what you're doing now so everyone can get an understanding of what you're up to with YouTube influencers?
Yeah. So about 6 years ago, I had stumbled upon a unique strategy for YouTube. I was originally creating videos to put on an SEO page on my website. Our SEO strategy worked. We could get the page to rank on the front of Google. But what I noticed was the YouTube videos that we were creating for that page by themselves were getting 50 times more traffic than the whole page itself that was ranking on the front of Google. And so because of all the work that we put into that page and, the transcriptions of the infographics and the link building and all this work, I just thought, let's just focus on the YouTube side of things because we're getting such great results. And I like results. And so what that's evolved to is now I'm producing 11 different YouTube channels that we produce daily content. So we're putting out at least 5 episodes per week. And for 11 different channels, people wonder how I do that. Well, I've got a couple filming assistants. I've got a team of 14 people that help me with editing and thumbnail design and launch. And when we film 20 or more episodes in a single day. So we'll do all the preparation work ahead of time. And my clients are like coaches, speakers, authors, mentors. And so we're making how-to, mostly talking head type videos. So when we film, I rent an Airbnb. That's going to be our filming studio for the day. We find one that's really nice and got character on the inside. And we'll start 9 a.m, film until like 5 or 6 at night. And then that gives us 4 weeks worth of content. And just to give you a scale, there's lots of different ways that you can make money on YouTube, but all of my clients are business owners or entrepreneurs. And so while we can make money through AdSense, which is the YouTube advertising, our main goal and much bigger potential is you can use YouTube as a lead generation system or machine that, people watch your videos. At the end of the video, there's a call to action to go get your free gift, and that enters them into your ClickFunnels sales funnel. So my biggest channel is with my friend Chris Crone. We're up to about 400,000 subscribers now. And that channel, just to give you perspective, that channel is bringing in about $600,000 per month in sales revenue from those YouTube leads.
Wow.
So it's awesome.
So how many YouTube channels are you managing right now?
Right now, 11.
And all 11 of those are posting regularly?
Yeah, between 5 and 7 episodes a week.
And you're the one filming and producing all of those episodes?
Yep, that's right.
Wow. So when you started this business, Were you the face of the early videos or were you behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes. So my own channel I launched last summer, but the big channel that I just showed you about, I've been in an episode or two, but we're probably around 750 episodes that we've created for that channel. And I might be in, maybe 5 of them. Chris is definitely the star. And I've been really good at positioning other people as the hero of the story, I guess. Well, because everyone, when they see this success that we've had on our different channels, they always talk to them. It's like, how did you do what you did on YouTube? And they're like, well, you need to talk to Nate. And they're like, well, who's Nate? So I thought, you know what? It's time for me to step into the spotlight. And so that's what I'm doing on my own channel, is teaching these things on YouTube.
Okay, great. So then we got a little introduction to your why and why you started, but do you mind diving a little deeper into why you started your personal brand about 1.5 years ago?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot because I love influence. I love working with influencers. And I've kind of questioned, why is that? And I look back to my childhood, and I had a really good childhood, had some really good friends. And at the same time, some of those same friends that I consider great friends could be bullies at times. I mean, I have one memory that must have impacted me in a big way because I reflect back on it a lot. I was 10 years old, something like that. I was at my friend Richard's home. We were playing in his backyard. They had this big jungle hut playhouse thing. And then my friend Matt joined us, and we were going to play hide and seek. Well, I was it. So I was counting, and they went to hide. And Matt convinced Rich that they were going to ditch me. And they climbed over the fence and they left. And so when I went to look for them, they were nowhere to be found. And I was just left alone. And I just remember feeling so terrible about that. I felt like, well, am I not important? What about my say? Does my opinion not matter? And just instances like that, I had low confidence. And even into my early adult life, I knew I valued my own opinion. I believe that I have some really good ideas. When we're in a group and we're planning something, I like, a lot of times I can figure out the solution. I consider myself a master of efficiency. So part of what I've noticed, just looking back at the different experiences I've had in business and working with different networking groups and whatnot, is just for myself, I've surrounded myself with influencers, and I've started to position myself more and more as an influencer so that my voice can be heard. It's kind of interesting to look back. It's like, well, my voice wasn't heard, so I've got to do something about it. One group that I've joined that I love is the National Speakers Association. And there's a lot of great people in there, successful people in there. And originally it was so intimidating to talk to them. I just felt like I wasn't at their level and whatnot, but just chose to surround myself with them and created services that they needed so that I would get the opportunity to work with them. It's kind of interesting where that all began.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, I can relate a lot to that because I've always been a behind the scenes person, and I'm at the foundation stages of my podcast, which is about where you were 1.5 years ago, I would say.
Yeah.
So when you started your influence, was it a conscious choice to become a social media influencer, or what was your intention going into it?
Well, definitely. When I saw the great success that my clients were having, I realized, man, I this is something I want for myself. I like the impact. I have a favorite quote from the Spider-Man movie. His Uncle Ben, gives him advice. He says, with great power comes great responsibility. I believe that influence is a power like that. It does come with great responsibility that, if people are going to follow your advice, if they're going to listen to you, it's very important to make sure that we're using that influence for good. We're making this world a better place. And so as I've chosen to surround myself with key influencers like this, I've definitely found influencers on both sides. And the influencers that use that influence with a money focus, really that's their end goal. I love making money. So don't get me wrong. I think money is a great tool, but it needs to come secondary to something else. It needs to come secondary to service and contribution, really making a positive impact and increasing, happiness or safety. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does make sense. So you were helping all these clients of yours build their channels and build income. And before, when you talked about it, I was under the impression that maybe you started your personal brand because you saw them making a living out of it. But the way that you just described it changes how I interpret that. Do you mind explaining a little bit about your motivations for continuing your YouTube influence?
Sure. And I'll say it's definitely a mixture of both. I mean, I love the success that I brought to my clients. And so, yeah, I love success for myself. But yeah, I can certainly go a lot deeper into the real purpose, the real core behind it. I'll even share a little bit of my faith. I mean, I believe that this life is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow and literally to become like God. I also believe that God is the master of influence, that of all the different examples of influence we've seen throughout history or today of leadership and what people do with their position of influence, everyone is flawed. Everyone has mistakes. Everyone has their own weaknesses, and sometimes our own pride or the reasons that we do things or might be selfish or self-serving. But we can always count on God being the perfect example of influence. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, I've really aligned myself and my skill sets, my abilities, with this kind of central focus on God being the master of influence, that if this life really is an opportunity for us to learn and grow and become like God, then I am helping influencers grow their influence and use it in the right way so that they become like God. So that's really what I believe. That's the passion behind what I do. And it's really fulfilling.
Okay, so the real purpose behind your influence right now, at least, aside from making a sustainable living, is to help other influencers build a living and build influence for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see people in our circles. Well, I'll just go back to the National Speakers Association. There's people there that have a message to share. They feel purpose driven to make an impact and to help and to serve and to teach. And the skill sets that I bring to the table really allow them to grow a much bigger following, to make a much bigger impact than they would be able to otherwise, or especially at a much more accelerated pace.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think a lot of those people need help with that. I've been to several NSA meetings.
Yeah.
So this is something that a lot of people struggle with identifying as, but do you consider yourself an influencer?
Well, absolutely. One tagline that I put now at the end of my email signature is to influence the one. When we can share our opinion or share some advice with an individual that's looking for answers, there's a few different levels of influence. Let me explain it this way. Let's say I'm speaking from the stage and I teach, and somebody hears that and they say, wow, that is encouraging. That clarifies things. That's kind of a first level of influence. When that person in the audience then goes and actually implements it, so not only were they like, oh yeah, I learned something, this was helpful, but now they're like, okay, when I'm back home several days later, I'm actually still implementing it. That's another level of influence. And then when that individual actually gets results from it. So if I share some advice that somebody implements and then they actually get results from it, let's say it transforms their business financially, or they find another level of joy in their life, that's real influence. So when you ask the question, if I consider myself an influencer, in each scenario, it could relate to one of these 3 different levels of influence. But I have an area of expertise, and people around the world can really benefit from that. So when they have questions or they're trying to figure something out on YouTube, by me taking my time and really guiding them and sharing my opinion, and when they say, oh, this is what I'm thinking, I'm going to go this direction, what do you think? And by me really helping them to succeed, just one person at a time, definitely I'm an influencer.
Okay. So did you always consider yourself an influencer even when you're behind the scenes back then? Were you consciously thinking of yourself as someone who, when you interact with people, you're influencing them? Or was there a moment that sort of clicked for you?
So it definitely didn't feel that way a while ago. So when did that click for me? I would say that within the last few years, it's become more and more solid. I mean, I knew that I loved the power of influence, and I knew that I loved surrounding myself with other influencers. I guess it's just when I get feedback, maybe this is the key, and maybe it's not the right key, but for me in my mind, it's when I get feedback of the thank you and wow, this really helped. And especially, like, here's a great example. So 5 or 6 years ago, when I started launching my strategy or kind of pitching the idea of my strategy to different people, it had only been proven in small scale. And so I knew back then, I remember knowing, like, this is a real strategy of influence. but I didn't see myself as an influencer yet. I went to other people who I saw as influencers that I knew I could make a difference for. Even though it wasn't proven in large scale, some people took a chance on me. That strategy has really worked out. The gentleman that I told you with the channel that's making $600,000 a month, when I look back at the role that I had in getting his business to that point, it's like just recognizing, wow, I've really influenced this major influencer. And so that's when I started to recognize that I am an influencer, even if I don't have as big of a following as he does on that channel yet. My channel's around 20,000 subscribers. I just started it last summer. But yeah, I mean, just seeing the impact, I guess, is what's really helped me to consider myself an influencer.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, seeing impact, getting feedback is definitely reassuring as far as having influence. And I think that with how many instances of feedback you get, there's even more that you're not getting that are out there, that I sort of call them unintended consequences for things that you're doing, because you're impacting things that you'll never even know that you impacted.
Yeah, one other thought is I've been a fan of, professional athletes. I don't watch the NBA as much as I would like. I really enjoy it. But anyway, the Utah Jazz, I've been big fans of them. And you see people that are in the spotlight because of their athletic ability. And, that's kind of my first exposure to the power of influence is like, okay, here's people who have thousands or even millions of fans. And just by one thing that they say can really, impact people, and whether they're kind or sometimes they might be mean and do something mean to their fans. It's like, there's great power in their position of authority. People look up to them and respect them and see them as their hero. And even before I got into this career path, that's something that I recognized early on, is when you have a position of respect or anything like that, whether you're a movie star or you're a politician or something like that, there's just a great responsibility that comes like that to really be at your best and to be a good example. So it really makes a big difference.
Awesome. Well, shifting gears a little bit, looking at your backgrounds, I can relate a lot to it. And I'm just curious, did you have any barriers, either personally or physically, to overcome in order to start doing any personal influence for yourself?
I've had my company for a little over 9 years, and the first 8 years were really tough financially. I mean, I had lots of successes along the way, but I definitely consider it a roller coaster financially, just ups and downs. And when I know my ideas are great, when I know the work that I'm doing is true, but then I need to go to my mom and say, hey, Mom, I know I'm in my mid 30s at the time, but I need to borrow some money. And then the response back is, well, Nate, why don't you get a job? Those are the biggest struggles that I've had. It's like I feel so purpose driven by what I'm doing, working with influencers. I know I have this strategy that works, but yet the struggle is real. And it is hard to you question yourself. I've got such good tenacity, I guess, or persistence. So glad that I've got that attribute, because there's so many times along the way where I could have easily just given up, even in the most kind of heart-wrenching times like that, and it wasn't just my mom. I've been told by respected leaders in the community that's like, you know what, you just need to go get a job. And I just, I believe I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I believe I'm doing what's right. And I know that it's going to work out. I just had confidence and faith in that. And, just sticking with it after those 8 years, and now jumping into the 9th year, which was all of 2018, and finally having it click and take off. My income multiplied by 10 that year. And definitely, it's not that it changed my opinion or stance on influence, but it definitely anchored it a lot more. It's like, all right, see, I told you I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, those are always good moments.
Yeah.
Pushing through those times are tough. And I know I've experienced those myself being an entrepreneur. But once you make it through it, then you come out to this other end with this completely different world.
Right.
Going with that, how has being an influencer changed you? So within this past year and a half, when you started creating your personal brand and started creating content for yourself, how do you see that you've changed from when you started that, or maybe a little bit before you started that, to where you are today?
Yeah, good question. The first thing that came to my mind were actually surface level, so maybe I'll mention those. I noticed that I was associating with a lot of wealthy people. And I decided to reach out to a friend of mine, a wardrobe stylist, to say, hey, how am I doing? Because I had designed my own logo and put my logo on these kind of like athletic shirts, and I thought, okay, cool, I'm really on brand. I'm going to wear this shirt everywhere I go, and or similar shirts. So I hired this wardrobe stylist. When she saw what I was wearing, she said, Nate, no, do not ever wear this shirt again unless you're going exercising. And I was like, oh, all right. And she pointed out some clothes and some shoes. She took me to Nordstrom to do some shopping. And I just looked at those things like, really? I should wear that? That is just so not me. Well, I decided to be coachable. I bought the clothes that she suggested. Well, interestingly enough, I happened to be in Austin, Texas. I ended up at this really high-level mastermind group. I was there for the first day, which was a 2-day event, and they were filming videos and stuff. That's kind of my connection, how I got in there. Well, there were people in the group that one person I know, she's making $19 million a year. That's probably more than that now, but just real influential people. Well, I was dressed sharp. I was just wearing something that I never would have worn. I stood out. That just the way that I was dressed, I fit in, and they wanted to talk to me. And they talked to me not as somebody who is a service provider, but they talked to me as an equal. And one of the participants in the group, he says, I want to work with you. And within a couple of weeks, we had ironed out the plan, and he's been a client ever since, and the packages that I offer range, but he's hiring me at my largest level, which is over $100,000 a year. So I really, it's funny to think that clothing can make such a big impact. And it's not that clothes make me a better person. I've recognized that first impressions, we don't want to judge a book by its cover, but we do, right? I look at a book, and if it's got a good cover, that intrigues me to want to know, okay, what's inside this book? Or in my case, I listen to audiobooks. But so that's one thing that has changed, is I've really changed my attitude about wardrobe and how I look. It's another strange thing. I never knew that I could grow facial hair and have it look decent, but I actually had some struggles with an ulcer just about a year ago, and I was just really sick for a time, not knowing what the problem was, and just went a little time without shaving, went about 3 weeks, and instead of shaving it off, I decided to just trim it up and thought, this actually is filling in better than I thought. So I let it go more, and now I haven't shaved off my beard since. So those are more surface level. Those probably aren't the most valuable of answers.
I think it has a lot of value, because a lot of people out there that want to create influence maybe don't think about how they appear when they're going into that or when they're actively in it. And I think that's an interesting response.
Well, and I'll bring up 2 more quick examples then.
Sure.
So I have a friend, Anne, and Anne has posted a lot of different photography over the years on social media, and she travels a lot. But one time, a couple years ago, this new headshot appeared on Facebook, and I looked at that. I was like, wow, that is a beautiful photo, and that is really captured Anne, everything about her. I just thought that was amazing. And so I looked into it to find out who is the photographer, and discovered this photographer named Emily. I found out her pricing was like 10 times higher than I'd ever paid a photographer. And I thought, okay, one day I'm going to work with her. Well, this last year, I worked with her, and the photos that came from it, I mean, you mentioned that you've been to my website. The photos that are on that site were taken by her. When we talk about social media, we talk about it all the time, how we always show our best side. We don't really see the mistakes and the flaws. And there's also a kind of a movement lately about vulnerability and being authentic. And all of that is true and fantastic. And I love it when people are vulnerable. But at the same time, I also believe that we really need to showcase our strengths and showcase our talents and abilities. And it's not a bad thing to really shine where we're skilled. And so if I can dress a certain way, if I can show up in certain photography, I actually had my logo redesigned from the one that I designed. I had a professional logo designer put their expertise and make it even better. So just by enhancing my brand and my image, it made it so much easier for me to offer my 6-figure package.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think presenting yourself is huge in dealing with people, especially in that kind of environment. So moving on to another question, which I'd like to focus on your personal influence, not your business in this one.
Sure.
So you've accumulated almost 20,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel and almost 2 million views on YouTube. And I'm just curious, has anybody contacted you directly to tell you how you impacted them up to this point? Or is there a memorable story that comes up for you for someone that you've personally influenced?
Yeah, so one that came to my mind quickly, a man named Roland. He lives in England. I was attending an event in Nashville, and he came up to me like, Nate, wow, you're here. I didn't know you were here. And, I didn't know who he was, didn't recognize him. He had a pretty awesome British accent. But he mentioned that he'd been following me on YouTube and that he made some major changes in his business because of the advice that I shared on YouTube. I was like, wow, it kind of hit me like, well, yeah, I'm giving this advice and obviously I expect people to listen to it or hope that they will. But when somebody shares that they did, it's been pretty cool to see. And then also he's one of those action takers. Like the things that I've taught him about YouTube, not even as a paying client. He actually just recently signed up for a 4-week challenge that I'm launching in the early part of May. But prior to now, he's not been a client, but yet he's implemented some of the things that I've taught just on my YouTube channel, and that's pretty significant. Another area that I've really come to recognize where I've had a lot of personal influence is through my staff. I've been hiring people in the Philippines for 9 years, 9.5 now. And last November, I traveled to the Philippines for the first time to meet them. And so I've got a team of 14 now, but back in November, it was a team of 10. And I met one individual first. He picked me up from the airport. And then I met his sister, who's also an employee of mine. And then we traveled to this fancy mall that had a restaurant on the roof. And as we were gathered there, and one by one, the different team members started trickling in. At first, my thoughts was, okay, what's this going to be like? Because we all work from our homes. We never really met each other in person. And I just thought, is this going to be awkward? Are we going to get along? Well, finally, it's me and all 10 of them sitting there at this fancy restaurant. And I just had this feeling because they were all looking at me with like respect and appreciation. I just felt so much warmth coming from them that, appreciating me for the work that they had. And one of my team members has been with me for 9 years. And I just felt actually a feeling of joy, like a real strong sense of fulfillment, just sitting there with all these people that realizing that I provide their livelihood. That's an area of influence that I don't know why it didn't click, but I just didn't count that as a level of influence. But from that moment on, I've been able to really recognize, wow, I really have a big impact on these wonderful people here in the Philippines.
Wow, that's really interesting how that came up in your influences, the people that are helping you with your influence. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess, can we dive a little bit into that? And you've got this team of 14 people. What kind of roles are these people helping you with? And what's your structure look like to be able to maintain so much content?
Yeah, great question. So it's evolved. Where we're at now is I've got several different editors that they'll just focus on all the editing. I have them all set up in the Adobe Creative Cloud, and we share all of our files through one big master Dropbox account. So when we do our filming here in Utah, it just syncs to them and they jump right in and we'll start editing. I have a person he really oversees everything. He's like my project manager and systems creator. And so when I see another weakness in our system or something that needs to be made more efficient or fixed or whatnot or patched up, he'll dive in and come up with ideas to do that. And I've got another 2 team members that they do thumbnail design. I've got a couple other people that will transcribe the videos and will write the descriptions and get everything ready for the YouTube launch. I've got a bookkeeper, keeps track of my finances and everything, and that makes up my team.
Very cool. So up to this point, you've been able to build a team to manage the content for 11 active channels that are posting roughly 5 times a week. Now creating content for your own channel and posting content to that on a regular basis. Most people struggle with motivation when it comes to creating content, and you're just plowing through creating tons of content. So is there a time that comes to mind where you struggled with motivation? And If you have an example, do you mind going into it a little bit?
Yeah, so definitely. So where I excel is creating systems to keep things efficient. I mentioned that when we'll film 20 episodes in a day. That came out of necessity because the clients that I was working with were busy. And I'll just go back to my example of Chris because I remember this conversation. When I started with him, we were originally just one episode per week, and we had gone a couple of years at that pace, and we had gotten some results, but I had learned some other things that could happen if we went to at least 5 episodes a week. And so I approached him about it and said, we really need to go 5 episodes a week here. And he kind of took a chance on me. And I said, something's going to happen at the 4-month mark, kind of a topic for another story, but it actually happened to the day, the 4-month mark. We had our first spike on our channel, and he became a believer then. We've actually increased up to 7 episodes a week. So with clients like Chris, it's been easy for me to set a date on the calendar, for me to be there and film, and for him to have all of his content ready so that we'll film 20 episodes in a day. And I've become really good at helping my clients stay that productive and that consistent so we don't miss a day on YouTube. But the struggle I had for myself is doing the same thing. If I were to prepare 20 topics, I could start filming and then get distracted by something and think, well, I can film myself anytime. I can film some of these tomorrow, or whatever my excuse was. And so the struggle was real. I just couldn't get myself to be as productive as I was making many clients. I thought, all right, I'm not able to just use willpower. I'll come up with another system. So I have a friend, Scott Christopher. He's an actor. He's been in some pretty big productions. I had a conversation with him and asked him if he'd help me out. So I scheduled a day to film 20 episodes for my channel, but he was going to kind of be a co-host. He would intentionally act kind of dumb or clueless, not in a degrading way, but just like, wow, I've never heard of this stuff before. And he really came there to add a lot of humor and to provide a lot of curiosity about the topics that I was talking about. So it was basically two of us sitting behind a table, be talking about a subject, maybe it's keyword research, and he would ask questions about, okay, well, if I were to do this, how would, and it not only did it add a fun dynamic to the channel, but for the first time, I filmed 20 episodes in a day. So just by adding a little system in there, or I guess incentive or whatnot, because I had the calendar booked and somebody else was going to be there, it kept me on target. And we did that for several months. And still to this day, I have to use tools like that, and not to call Scott a tool, but strategies like that, where I'll put something on the calendar and hold myself accountable to somebody else to make sure that that happens. So yeah, I definitely understand that struggle.
Yeah, and go into that a little bit. For me, I recorded my episode 000, my origin story, and I'm not used to just talking to a microphone. And so the tonality and my energy was just all off. So actually the other day, I asked a buddy of mine if he could just interview me for my episode 000 so I can be more natural in speaking. So I'm sure that not only having him there to help motivate you helped, but having him there to drill into those things and with more curiosity probably helps your content be a little bit better too.
It certainly does. I eat and breathe this stuff all day long. I know all the jargon and whatnot. So when I explain something, I just think it makes total sense and everyone understands. But to have somebody else there that's like, well, now what does that mean? Can you explain that a little bit more? Or oh, really? Something that I would say that I just kind of brush by, but then other people will say, really? How did you do that? I'm like, oh, that is interesting, huh? Okay. And so it allows me to get a lot deeper into my content and to explain it more fully.
Awesome. So shifting gears a little bit again, let's talk a little bit about your future and your goals and dreams related to your personal brand and your personal channel. Do you mind sharing what's inspiring you most about your future in regards to your personal brand?
Sure. What's been awesome is this last year, because I've been in a different place financially, I've actually allowed myself to just slow down a little bit. I have definitely become a workaholic, and love spending time with wife and kids. But sometimes even when doing that, I've felt guilty for doing so, like I should be working. And especially when going through 8 years of financial struggle and whatnot, now I'm in a place where I can think without urgency. I can create goals without that urgency. And looking back, I'm so grateful that I had those 8 years of struggle, because it really gives me a great perspective. I've learned a lot. I really have a lot of business wisdom now that, had I been successful much earlier, I just simply wouldn't have. It's probably easy for me to say it now that I'm in a much more comfortable place, but I don't think I would trade it for a different experience, just because I really like the path that I've gone on now. And for my future, I'm not perfectly clear yet. I'll just be open about that. I am pursuing more clients. I have a monetary goal. I want to get to a point where I'm making 10 million a year, but I don't exactly have it mapped out, because there's a couple different paths I can take to get there. One thing that I will share is, now that I've been able to take the urgency off, I looked at my clients and realized that I only had one woman that I was working with, and the rest were men. And there's a lot of great women out there that are influencers, that have such a great, powerful message, a great gift to share. And so in this coming month, I'm actually taking on 3 new clients that are all women. And I'm just really excited about helping them really leverage this great tool of YouTube to really make a bigger impact and get some more positive, powerful feminine energy out there.
Yeah, that's exciting. I look forward to hearing how things go as you move further in your journey.
Thank you.
As far as, let's say you met a new influencer or someone who aspired to be an influencer on the street, and they approached you, what advice would you give someone interested in being an influencer or scaling up their influence in the early stages that you think would help?
Yeah, very good question. So the reason that I love YouTube so much is because right now, all around the world, people are searching for your expertise. So I'm either talking to you or I'm talking to any listener on this podcast. You have expertise. People are searching for it, but they just don't know that you exist yet. And what YouTube can do is it can put you in front of them. And the keyword research strategy I teach, really all we're doing is we're finding the questions that people are asking. And then we make a video that answers that question. So if I do some keyword research, I find one of those questions, I make a video today, I post it tonight, then tonight my video will rank on YouTube and people will start to find it that have never heard of me before but are searching for me. So instead of just creating a video or creating a piece of content to post somewhere, because it's like, you know what, today I feel like talking about this. If we can just take one step before that and find out what questions are people asking, so that then we can fit what we want to say into that answer, we can really answer those questions, that will make a huge, huge difference in building your tribe and growing your influence.
Okay, so you're putting a lot of emphasis into making sure that when you're starting out to target the keywords really powerfully and accurately.
Right. That's the foundation of all the success and the results that we're getting. And, this is really meant to be help. I do want to push a video that I have on my YouTube channel. If you do a search for the tree analogy, I made that video to really lay the foundation of exactly how you do this type of keyword research and how you can find these questions that people are asking. It's so effective. I mean, you can really film a video today and post it and have it rank today and have people find you that are looking for you. So it definitely is at the core of what I teach and what I do in my work.
That's some really good advice, very valuable. So you've created a ton of content, and most people struggle with one piece of content per day per channel, and you manage this for a lot of channels. And we've talked about a lot of the strategies you use and processes you have in place. But is there anything that you haven't talked about that you think would be beneficial for people as far as some of your secret sauce or what you are doing that's you believe is different than the average YouTuber?
Yeah, I'll mention outsourcing again. So my team in the Philippines, I wouldn't be able to work at the capacity I do without them. And it's not just because I have other people, but it's specifically the opportunity of hiring people in the Philippines is that they're very skilled. Their English is fantastic. They're very loyal and dedicated. and they're very, very affordable. And I'll just throw some numbers here. The average amount that I pay for a full-time work, 40 hours a week for a full month, I pay $500 a month. And to think about what it would cost for me to hire somebody here in the United States at that same level, it's probably like $5,000 a month. And so as an entrepreneur or as an influencer, just think about what would one additional person, meaning if it's just you, if you could double yourself, and if you're going to put in 8 hours and you can hire somebody else to also put in 8 hours, what could you do to really free up your life and help you focus on the areas that you most enjoy, that you're the most skilled at, and turning over systems that you've created that you're spending a lot of your time. Now you can free up that time and hire somebody else for $500 a month to do those other tasks for you. That's really allowed me to create the business of my dreams, really. And as I've shared that with other people and seen them, it's so helpful to be able to transition from being self-employed to really being a business owner. You can work on your business and you can create it and you can grow it. So I could talk for hours on that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your why, Nate. I'd like to end the podcast with giving you an opportunity to talk about your brands, your social accounts, your podcast, your boot camp, your business, anything else you'd like to share with our audience.
Yeah, I'll just direct everyone to my YouTube channel. It's on my name, Nate Woodbury, and I link to other places from there. I can also share my website. It's BETHEHEROStudios.com. So BETHEHEROStudios.com. And everything that I shared here, I go into depth on my YouTube channel. And that's kind of a great place for people to find anything I can share.
Well, Nate, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your journey, and I hope you have a great remainder of 2019, and I'm looking forward to watching your influence keep on growing.
Yeah, thanks so much. I wish you all the success on this podcast. You're a great interviewer. You've asked great questions, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Well, that concludes this episode. I think we need just a moment of silence. I think Nate's got it all figured out. He knows how to post daily content to 11 YouTube channels. He's got clients who are using the YouTube channels to send customers through sales funnels that generate up to $600,000 a month in revenue, which is probably more today and will probably be more tomorrow. Creates 20 episodes in a day. He'll rent an Airbnb, get his film crew, just crank all those episodes out and send them out to his team to get created. Aside from his accomplishments from his business and the efficiency that he's created, I think it's interesting that Nate has worked with influencers for a while, but it wasn't until about 1.5 years ago that he decided to do influencing himself. And before that, he even struggled to identify himself as someone who has influence, even though he was helping people who had influence. And, you know, the person behind the scenes of an influencer would definitely have a lot of influence on that person. And then that person has a lot of influence. He's around a lot of influence, but he's struggled with identifying as someone that has influence until he really accepted it and started doing his own journey. I think it's interesting that he surrounded himself by people who were influencers so that it could help lift him to be one himself. He went to NSA meetings, the National Speaker Association, and started interacting with people who are used to talking on stage and giving keynote talks. And I think that that helped with his journey as well, surrounding himself by people who are going to help lift you. I don't know about you guys, but I related a lot to Nate's mentality and thought process related to influence. I liked that Nate quoted Spider-Man's uncle, with great power comes great responsibility, and he related to that to influence. So with great influence comes great responsibility. He shared how much of a struggle it is to be an entrepreneur. You know, he spent 8 years in his business struggling financially. I mean, he even in his mid-30s was going to his parents and being like, you know, I need some money to make a living. And then now he's figured it out. It took 9 years, but now he's doing it. He said some new things that other influencers haven't brought up yet, which is making sure that you dress well, that, you know, he grew a beard and he keeps it clean, he stays consistent with his look. A lot of things that people don't necessarily think a lot about that have a lot of power over how you appear in public. And he dresses for success, and he's able to be in a room with people who make tens of $millions a year and talk to them as equals, and they don't question it because he's dressed for it as well. If you're creating content on YouTube, it's important to take an extra step and find out what kind of questions people are asking before you create your videos. Do your keyword research. Nate said that he attributes keyword research as the foundation for his success, which is a pretty big compliment because he's had quite a bit of success in the space. He talked a lot about outsourcing and how hiring a team really helped him scale, especially a team that you can afford to outsource to. Anyway, you were here for the interview. I just wanted to reiterate a few points that I thought were powerful. I liked at the end how he left a compliment for me and said that he thought I had a good interview style. I took that as a compliment because this is a journey for myself, and I definitely feel like I'm getting better over time, and I'm glad that I get that kind of feedback through the process. I believe there were a couple moments where the conversation sort of got off track from where I was trying to take it, and I'm not really sure how to bring the conversation back quite yet. So still something I'm figuring out, but I'd like to get better at sort of taking the conversation in certain directions without letting them get off track too much. And if it gets way off track, then I want to figure out how to politely bring it back on track. I think I did a better job in this interview diving deeper into certain topics, but I think I can still get better at that. There's certain points where I could have gone deeper and pulled some really good value points out where we were just like right on the cusp of getting those. I'm not as fast at seeing that and not as good at pulling those out, and that's something I'm working on. Overall, I thought it was a great interview. I thought Nate is awesome. So Nate, thanks again for coming on the show. Thanks to you guys for making it this far in the episode and listening in. I'm sure we'll get the opportunity to bring Nate back on the show sometime in the future and get some updates from him and learn a little bit more. If you're new here and you enjoyed this episode, then hit that subscribe button because there's a lot more content coming out in this podcast. There's old content that we've already done that you can go and listen to, and tons of value in every single episode. It's just amazing. It's just like this one. It's just everyone has so much wisdom to be shared. If you're a returning listener, then thanks again for tuning in. If you haven't already, please leave an iTunes review. Those reviews help us get bigger and better guests on the show. So just take a moment, go to iTunes, type in Why Influence, find the podcast, and just leave a quick review. I read all those comments and reviews, so just whatever you write in there, I'll be reading that. So feel free to put some comments for me to take a look at. Aside from that, you can find all the information related to Nate on our website. You go to whyinfluence.com, whyinfluence.com. You go to episode 6, and we're going to have show notes in there. We're going to have links to Nate's YouTube channel, all his social accounts, his website. We'll embed the video that he talked about in this episode. I think he mentioned the tree analogy, so we're going to have that embedded on the show notes page of the website. So just go to episode 6 on the Why Influence website, and you'll find all the information you need about Nate there. Again, as I said before, while you're on the site, you might as well scroll to the bottom and subscribe to our newsletter. We haven't really started sending anything out yet, but once we do start sending things out, we're going to start off by sending a bunch of free stuff, and anyone who subscribes to the newsletter early is going to have access to a lot of these exclusive things that are going to be offered in the newsletter. So just subscribe to the newsletter. Doesn't hurt, and you're going to get some free stuff out of it. Thanks again for listening to the show, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.